Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizenghausen. It is August 11th. Today's top news as of this moment. Today, several critical facilities were hit within the territory of the Russian Federation. Let's go through them in order. The strike on Sibur in Tobolsk. The destruction of the central gas fractionation unit at the Sibur site in Tobolsk has been confirmed. After the strike, a fire and destruction were recorded there. And this is, mind you, 2,260 kilometers from the border with Ukraine in a straight line. That is, if not in a straight line, then the drones flew all 2,500 kilometers. And it is important to understand here that this is not just another small oil reservoir or even an ordinary medium-sized refinery. Tobolsk is one of the key hubs in the entire Russian petrochemical chain. That is, the drones in this case struck a facility capable of processing nearly 4 million tons of raw material per year. A single facility. And the total capacity of this enterprise is 8 million tons per year. Almost 3,500 people work at this enterprise, meaning it is simply gigantic. But there is another effect, perhaps no less important than the physical damage. Tobolsk is 2,200 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. That's it. The illusion of a deep rear has vanished. Locating such gigantic enterprises, thinking that they are deep in the rear, that Siberia is unreachable, that's it. The illusion has vanished. Now the concept of the Russian deep rear is becoming entirely conditional, and it is necessary to defend not only oil refineries near Ukraine, occupied Crimea, or enterprises in the Volga region, but also strategic industry beyond the Urals. And this is a completely different scale of territory and completely different requirements for Russian air defense. There is no air defense for everyone. There is no air defense. No, but you hang in there. But that is not all. Another Russian oil refinery received a greeting from our drones today, and this is already in the southern Urals. The General Staff officially confirmed the strike on the Orsk Synthes refinery. This is in the city of Orsk, Orenburg Oblast. The distance from Ukraine is about 1,500 kilometers. After the strike, a fire was recorded on the territory of the enterprise. In general, it's burning, just as you like it, beautifully and brightly. Let's take a look. And the facility itself is truly quite significant, boasting an impressive capacity of processing about 6 million tons of oil every single year. When you look at the bigger picture, the cumulative effect of these operations is also incredibly important, as it plays a vital role in the overall efficiency and long-term output of the entire system. That is, the Orsk refinery on its own, obviously, will not collapse the Russian oil refining industry. But when Russians have to repair plants simultaneously from the Black Sea and the Volga region to the Urals and Siberia, naturally the reserve capacity disappears. And perhaps the most unpleasant thing for the Kremlin is the geography again, 1,500 kilometers from Ukraine in a straight line. That is, the Russians built their air defense system at the beginning of the war based on a completely different depth of the safe rear. At the very beginning of the war, they didn't think at all that anything would fly back there. But now it's flying 2,500, 2,000 kilometers. But that's not all. In Orsk, they also hit the Orsk mechanical plant, a Rostec system enterprise that manufactures artillery shells and components for grads. Moreover, according to open Russian data, this enterprise accounts for more than half of the production of shells of certain calibers. But that's not all. Now I will tell you where else they hit, but for now let me remind you, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It is important. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda. Together we will do this much more effectively, so be sure to subscribe. And Wildberries is on fire again. This time one of the largest and newest logistics centers was hit hard. This is in Novaya Usman near Voronezh. Let's watch the video. Well, what a beauty. A brand new gigantic hub. It was fully launched only at the end of last year. The area is 156,000 square meters, investments of 11 billion rubles, capacity of 90 million units of goods. This same complex was hit on July 23rd. Back then, the fire turned out to be very limited. Operations were quickly restored, but I say every time, if Ukrainian drones have targeted something, they will definitely burn it down. Well, that's exactly what happened. And this is already the 21st Wildberries warehouse to be attacked. By this moment, the amount of warehouse space burned down is approaching 1.5 million square meters. Almost a third of all Wildberries facilities have been destroyed. This is a very serious blow, including to the Russian economy and the military budget. The situation has now become much more serious. Reuters writes today about 30% of Wildberries' warehouse capacity being destroyed, economic damage of nearly $4 billion, and a drop in sales of approximately 25%. In 2025, last year, approximately $75 billion worth of goods passed through Wildberries. That is 3% of Russia's GDP. In other words, one destroyed Wildberries facility starts generating losses across several sectors at once: retail, small business, transport, taxes, banking, the banking system, and so on. And the Russian state ultimately has to choose where to direct its limited funds: save the civilian economy or continue financing the war. Well, it's clear what Putin chooses. This means everything will start collapsing inside the Russian Federation itself. And Ukraine is performing an incredible feat. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the Ukrainian Defense Forces. Today, together with the Pataki project, we are continuing an important fundraiser for tactical medicine and 1,000 tourniquets for the legendary Azov. The fundraiser for tactical medicine is a fundraiser to save the lives of our defenders. Please watch this video.
Всім привіт! Мій позивний джедай, діючий військовослужбовець 12-ї бригади спеціального призначення Азов.
Привіт, мене звати Тата, і я засновниця проєкту «Птахи». Ми займаємося військовою і тактичною медициною.
І разом з Борисом
Тізенхаузеном ми збираємо на 1,000 турнікетів для бригади Азов. Дуже просимо вас підтримати збір, бо коли ви донатите на такмед, ви донатите на життя.
Let's help the Azov warriors. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video, and there is a QR code in the corner for those watching me on other channels. Tourniquets for the Azov Brigade really save lives, so let's help our warriors. Putin has really gone off. He's said so much just in the last 24 hours. Every time I think that, well, it's probably impossible to say anything more absurd. No, he manages to. Let's start with something light. I have never been afraid of anything. That's what Putin said about the danger of artificial intelligence. I don't know, he doesn't use the internet, he doesn't use a phone. How can he even talk about artificial intelligence? And regarding, I have never been afraid of anything. Are you serious? Is that exactly why you have bunkers dug 10 stories underground and identical offices so that, God forbid, no one figures out where you are? There's a whole minibus full of replicants touring all over Russia that Putin sends out in his place. You have always been afraid, you cowardly ghoul. You were afraid of Nemtsov, you were afraid of Politkovskaya, you were even afraid of Yabloko. Scary, so scary. Putin is trembling for his worthless life, and for its sake he is ready to destroy millions of Russians. And regarding not being afraid, here are two pieces of news that are right on topic. Putin visited Novosibirsk after all. So the residents of Novosibirsk were ordered not to go outside and not to open their windows on the day of Putin's visit. And why? So they wouldn't be blinded by his radiance, or what? Why not go near the windows? And also, before Putin's arrival in Novosibirsk, scooter rentals were banned for several days. Well, on a number of streets where he would be driving through. Can you imagine? What a Botox-filled coward. I mean, seriously. They planted flower beds along Putin's route, replaced the asphalt, set gas prices back to last year's levels, but he got scared of scooters. I understand why he was scared of them. You know those little rental scooters parked along the road? What if one of them suddenly goes boom? Yeah, but you're riding in your armored Uruses or whatever it is he travels in. What are you afraid of? Well, one scooter, remember, took out the Russian General Kirillov. I think Putin is now afraid of scooters too. Ban all scooters entirely, ban them, so the old man doesn't soil himself out of fear on the road. How vile and cowardly it really is, isn't it? It's too far to Novosibirsk anyway, so they'll send a replicant. The one who, looks like he's constantly a bit tipsy, all cheerful, who speaks in some strange voice and dances around a bit on stage. The Kremlin has given Armenia 1 month to decide between membership in the EAEU and the European Union. The Armenian newspaper Hraparak writes about this. I hope I read that correctly. Otherwise, Russia may move to a second, tougher stage of restrictions up to the deportation of Armenian citizens and flight restrictions that will hit tourism. Once again, our garlic and vodka reeking drunkard neighbors are trying to, as I call it, force kindness upon us. In other words, these pathetic people just can't understand that the entire civilized world can already see the sunset of their empire. Again, they are dictating that, come on, decide quickly who you are with, and so on. They'll figure everything out there without you. Sort things out for yourself. Look at your own country. In the end, I think only two elderly dictators will remain in this dismal little circle of Putins, him and Lukashenko. There will, of course, still be situational partners who will stupidly profit from the sanctions against Russia. But that's only as long as the money keeps dripping in, as long as there's profit to be made. It's amazing how one could flush relations with dozens of countries, global markets, allies, one's own economy, and one's own citizens down the toilet like that. And all for what? For what? For the sake of that Donbass which you ended up bombing yourself. Just a textbook degenerate. And here's this wonderful piece of news. It's just that when I said Putin had spun a whole bunch of tall tales, well, here it is. Putin has demanded that Russian scientists urgently invent technologies to replace foreign ones. Russia needs to significantly accelerate and spur the development of future technologies for the sake of sovereignty in defense and the economy, Putin stated at a meeting of the Council for Science in Novosibirsk. According to the bald hat, all of Russia's strategic scientific assets must be aimed at solving this task. And now I will give you his full quote, and he talks like this about literally everything. You could just change the topic here, and it would be any speech by Putin. The most interesting thing is that his words make absolutely no sense. But he talks like this everywhere and always. Let me quote him. The speed of creating and, of course, implementing innovations in the modern world determines literally, without any exaggeration, everything. Our sovereignty, economic development, the solution to both civil and crucial defense tasks, which today are strongly intertwined in terms of technology. He said no, nothing, absolutely nothing. This is any speech by Putin, but in practice it has nothing to do with reality. For 25 years, he hasn't invested a single extra ruble into science, instead siphoning off the massive oil and gas rent to all his cooperatives for palaces and yachts. That is, he drove the funding for Russian science below the level of the agonizing USSR in 1988, and has already bled it dry with both sanctions and war. And during the years of the war, scientists have fled abroad 4 times faster than they did before 2022. And now this bald piece of filth is demanding from the podium that we urgently accelerate the technologies of the future. You have to invest in science for decades to accelerate anything there. Well, the masses will swallow it. I wanted to comment on the story about the removal of the Yabloko party. You know, there is one important point there. It's not about whether they were removed or not, that it seems to me was predictable, but about what this story actually showed and what the Russian authorities have been trying to hide for many years, and now they can no longer hide it. This story will have a continuation, and a very, very sad one for the Russian Federation itself and for the Russians. Well, in principle, it suits us. The Yabloko story is the finale of the technology that was called managed democracy. And the finale, by the way, is logical. That is, in essence, Kirienko, who oversaw all these games, there, in some kind of managed democracy, he decided to play a little bit again. Yabloko will get its 1 or 2% there, that's fine. We will show some kind of multi-party system. And Kirienko has now been slapped on the wrist. Nobody in Russia is playing at managed democracy anymore, and naturally not at opposition either, because it's already scary to play, because it might get out of control, because the paranoia of the underground grandpa has reached the scale of all of Russia. Managed democracy worked on exactly one assumption, that public indifference is a constant variable. That is, the Surkov model of the 2000s was built not on suppressing the opposition, but on the idea that it could be tamed, this opposition. Meaning some kind of opposition party had to exist, or several, in order to channel protest into an absolutely safe direction. But this party was never supposed to gain the will of the people. In other words, the technology was designed relying on, the apathy of the population as raw material. As long as people perceived Yabloko as, a kind of ritual checkmark on the ballot, the system worked perfectly. The Kremlin showed the West, look, we have democracy here. The West, by the way, pretended to believe it. But the glitch didn't happen because Yabloko somehow became stronger. The glitch happened because for the first time in a long while, a real desire of the population touched what was effectively an empty symbol. That is a desire that was, horizontal, niche, grassroots, not organized by the party apparatus in any special way. Because the memes with the apple, the fact that even these Russian millionaire bloggers started making videos, this isn't party agitation, they weren't paid, and it's not the merit of Yabloko's political strategists. It's a spontaneous crystallization around this real desire for change. The Kremlin isn't afraid of the opposition. It has long known how to deal with the opposition through arrests and foreign agent registries. It is afraid precisely of the spontaneous emergence of some kind of meaning. And here is the key. If the technologies of managed democracy break down from a simple meme, if they got scared there and say, let's cancel it urgently, it means the regime no longer has these halftones, these fine-tuning tools. That is, previously there was a whole spectrum of reactions where, like taking someone off the air, you could crush them financially, put up some spoiler candidate, compromise them through dirt. That's it. Now, between, letting a party exist and destroying it completely through the Supreme Court, there are no intermediate steps left. They got scared, and this is not a sign of the regime's strength. They have lost a huge part of the tools they could use to control things. That is precisely why the amplitude of repression in the Russian Federation will now grow. It will grow significantly. The threshold for triggering these repressions is falling very quickly. In essence, there wasn't even any threat. Well, so what if those young people had gone and walked around a bit? They got scared. And, of course, the FSB probably assessed the protest potential quite accurately, and I think the agency's analysts didn't like that one bit. That's why Kirienko and his game of fake multi-party politics were pushed aside. And the agency guys took over, which means they're going to start arresting everyone now. And what's interesting is that the decorative opposition cost the Kremlin mere pennies. There was no need to negotiate, to take anyone into account, or to bargain. It was enough to just put on a show every few years, get the appearance of legitimacy in return, and have an alibi for the outside world. We have democracy here, I don't know anything. That's it. Now the regime has shown that the games are over, the screws will be tightened to the maximum. And we're waiting for Volodin to start shouting, one party, one president, one Reich. And then the deputies will pick it up. Whoever didn't pick it up, well, they went to a pretrial detention center. How will all this end? Like this kind of fear from the system, this tightening of the screws. Such systems often devour themselves. From within, the repression starts spreading to those who are guarding the system itself. I think this is noticeable now. Both the military leadership is getting caught in the crossfire, and the security forces will be next soon. That is, the paranoia is intensifying, penetrating every room of the Kremlin palace. As the saying goes, Anushka has already raised the snuff box. Well, in general, throughout Putin's entire rule, Russians have had 1 million or 1 billion probably warning signs, both hidden and absolutely obvious, to understand what kind of monster they brought to power. Nemtsov himself was telling you the truth every single day until he was killed. I will list just a few of these warning signs here, but it seems to me that even 1/10 of them is enough. The Ryazan sugar, when they were blowing things up, the FSB was blowing up its own fellow citizens to create a demand for a strong hand, to bring Putin to power. Kursk, that was the first year of Putin's rule. That moronic smile, it sank. Dorenko's episode, remember, there was Dorenko's program when he just smeared Putin, exposed his lies. They shut it down. That was the last episode. The destruction of independent NTV, that was in 2001. Nordost, 2002. The murders of Tsepov and Shcheko Chikin, that was the third, 2003, 2004. Beslan, 2004. Politkovskaya, who uncovered all these stories, 2006. The murder of Anna Politkovskaya. The murder of Alexander Litvinenko in that same year, 2006. Well, in general, and it was just one after another there, Putin's return for a third term when he broke the constitution over his knee, then the occupation, the annexation of Crimea, the start of the war in Donbass, the murder of Nemtsov in 2015, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And I have no illusions that Russians will now take to the streets and say, how did we not notice all of this? After all, he is killing us, the Russians. After all, he is destroying Russia. It turns out Putin is the main enemy of the people. A significant portion of Russians have always supported Putin, even after his idiotic smirk about the Kursk submarine, after the invasion of Ukraine, and after the murder of Nemtsov. They have always supported him. But the thing is, the repressive system in Russia has now gained such speed and such momentum that it is in principle impossible to stop. It will be like in Stalin's times. That is, they were shooting even those who gave the orders for the executions. They will destroy both the sympathizers of the system and those who are against it. They won't really be making distinctions anymore. Therefore, how many more Russians he takes with him to the grave in various senseless wars depends on how quickly the Botox jellyfish in Russia is extinguished. And if he is not neutralized now, then there will be more and more of these wars. He has set a course for the destruction of the Russian Federation. It seems to me that this has been obvious to sensible people for a long time. Well, and you friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. And let's help the legendary Azov. The link to the fundraiser for tactical medicine is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine!